Welcome to Boxing Predictions, where today we're talking about the heavyweight boxing rankings here in the summer of 2019. Now on the channel we do this twice a year. We do it in the winter and we do it in the summer. We think that is a good distance apart. You know, it allows fighters, majority of fighters, to have one, possibly two fights. You know, so there is some genuine movement in the rankings. So in this video, you know, we're going to be going through the top 10. We're going to be discussing these fighters. We're going to be talking about the past 6 months since the last ranking, and we're going to be, you know, looking forward to the next 6 months and counting down those fighters. This sounds like something you're interested in. Please watch the rest of the video. Now, if you're new to the channel, please consider smashing that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. And hit that notification bell so you'll be notified as and when new videos pop up on this channel. So let's get going. So this is the heavyweight rankings, as I say, in the summer of 2019. You know, in the past 6 months, there has been some quite big fights, some shocks, some changes, and they will be reflected in those rankings. So when you're talking about heavyweight rankings, boxing rankings, you know, people have different thoughts about how they put it together. But from my point of view, you know, as years have progressed, I've come to the decision that my rankings will be based on a few things. So what I'm looking for to start with is their overall CV. You know, what have they actually achieved? Secondly, the level of opposition that they've faced, and, you know, considering, you know, what they have actually done as well. So the opposition, you know, how credible the level of opposition is that they've been fighting, with a real focus on recent results and obviously a nod to the last outing. So let's get going. So when I was putting this together, really the top 10, it actually picked itself. You know, the 10 guys that are on this ranking, I couldn't really give much of an argument for anyone else to be inside this top 10. But it's the order of this 10, which is what it's all about. So let's start with position number 10. Now, the person that's gone in number 10 is someone that was not in my rankings last year, and that is Kubrat. I think that's how we pronounce it, always forget. And he's new into the rankings, and to be perfectly honest, he gets in because some others have slipped up for some reasons that, you know, we will discuss. So Kubrat, 19-0 with 15 stoppages. Now his CV is mainly prospects, you know, with a couple of journeymen. To be perfectly honest, it's particularly thin, but he is undefeated and he is on the way up. Okay, he has beaten former contenders in Gerald Washington and Spilka, you know, with a points win over one-time champ Charles Martin. Okay, so his form is basically the wins over Martin and Washington, and to be honest, I think he's the best US-based contender that's not currently suspended. Okay, so that's number 10. Now we move on to position number 9, and it is Kubrat Pulev. He feels like he has been hanging about like a bad smell for ages and ages and ages. I really rate him, actually. I think he's got some real tidy skills, to be perfectly honest. He's 27-1 with only 14 stoppages. That's really my biggest problem I've always had with Pulev. You know, you're looking at a 50% knockout record, you know, for a heavyweight. It's just not quite good enough. He lost in his biggest fight. That was against Wladimir. He's got some decent wins over, you know, gatekeeper level sort of guys in Dimitrenko, Usmanov, Thompson, Chisora, and he had a victory over Fury, where Fury got a really bad cut. He has actually been undefeated. As I say, he's only got that one defeat, so he's been undefeated since 2014, since the Wladimir fight. You know, he was in line to fight Anthony Joshua, pulled out. You know, so his recent form includes wins over Fury and Dinu. He's been somewhat inactive, you know, and that is the reason why he's in 9th position. You know, as I say, he's been undefeated for a long time, but the level of opposition he's fighting is just not good enough for someone who really should be getting a title shot. So in 8th position, it is Joseph Parker. Now, Joseph Parker, interesting heavyweight boxer, 25 wins and 2 defeats with 19 stoppages. He has wins over current heavyweight champ Andy Ruiz Jr., Takam, Lomachenko, and Hughie Fury. He's lost to both Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte, and his recent form is basically those 2 fights and a very easy comeback fight. Joseph Parker, I say he's interesting because he's someone that when he was, a prospect, I was super excited about him. I saw so many good attributes that I thought were going to help him out. And for me, I personally feel that his style was drastically changed as he's hit world level. And that's the reason why he's no longer the champion. I don't know whether he has enough to get back to titles. I think he'll probably get another shot at some point. At least he will have, there will be big fights for him. But I have to put him in 8th position because of he's lost these big fights in his recent form. So 7th position is someone I've always liked, and that is Alexander Povetkin. 34 wins, 2 defeats with 24 stoppage victories. He's got he's participated in 7 world title fights, and he's kind of fought the who's who of fringe level and contenders. His defeats, no real shame. Lost to Wladimir and he lost to Anthony Joshua. His form includes the stoppage win, which was a bit shaky over David Price, and then the defeat to Anthony Joshua. No action 2019, nothing scheduled. So he is in danger of losing this ranking if he doesn't fight for the rest of this year. We'll have to see. It might be the end for Povetkin. I know there's been talk about him possibly fighting Usyk and some other people. I think he's probably still got something to give. Whether he's got the ability and he's still got it left in the tank to become a champion again, possibly depends on the opposition. So 6th place is someone who I've always given a bit of a bad rap to be perfectly honest. I've never highly ranked him, highly thought of. He's been in the rankings for quite some time, and that is Louise Ortiz. Now, Louise Ortiz, 31-1 with 26 stoppages. Personally, I think that his CV is pretty thin, pretty damn thin. He's got decent wins over Jennings, Thompson, Malik Scott. But he has a stoppage loss to Wilder in that epic fight last year. Real exciting heavyweight fight that could have gone either way, let's be honest. There's a potential rematch in the offing. We don't know whether that's going to happen. Recent form is basically comprehensive wins against, gatekeeper journeyman type people, keep them busy, and looking forward to those big fights. But as I say, there's a lot of the performances have been substandard, I believe, from Ortiz. But really, for me personally, the fight against Wilder, I thought his performance was pretty good, and it kind of changed my view of him. And he keeps this 6th position. So now we move into the top 5. Right, 5th place. 5th place is the only person, in his top 5 not to have a title, and that is Dillian Whyte. 25-1 with 18 stoppages. He has his 1 defeat, and that was against Anthony Joshua back in 2015. No losses since. Pretty good performances since. He's got wins over former champs in Lucas Browne, Joseph Parker, as well as 2 good wins over Chisora. He's probably the most deserving fighter of a title shot in the top 20 that actually hasn't, had one for quite some time. Okay, tough assignment coming up for Dillian Whyte, and that is Oscar Rivas. Coming up in the next couple of weeks. I think this is going to be an interesting one. I need to give it more thought, but there will obviously be, a preview of that in the next week or so. And if he gets through that, it would be a travesty that he did not get, a shot against one of the belt holders, in my humble opinion. So now we move into the real interesting stuff, possibly the controversial stuff, where everyone's going to have their top four. It will probably be the same top four, but what is your order? Go down to the comments section. Let me know what your top four was, okay? Because the top four is the most interesting. So in fourth position, I'm going with AJ Anthony Joshua, and that's 22-1. It's his record. It was that almost perfect, but it's now 22-1 with 21 of those fights by stoppage. For all of his critics, and he has a lot of them, and I am one of them, he's got a pretty good CV in opposition list, and it's probably possibly one of the best, if not the best, in the top 10. In terms of opposition, regardless of whether he knocked him out in 10 seconds or what, it's a decent list of fighters. He's been in 8 world title fights. Out of 23 fights. He's beaten former champs in Wladimir Klitschko, in Joseph Parker, Povetkin. Charles Martin delivered him the titles. He's got fairly easy wins over repeat title contenders in Dominant Brazil and Molina. He's got good wins over Takam and White. His only defeat was against Andrew Ruiz Jr., who exposed him, hurt him, and stopped him, in comprehensive fashion, really. Andrew Ruiz Jr. definitely deserved that. And Joshua, was found out. Whether there's all these excuses or whatever, Joshua in the last rankings was number 1, and it was based on form and opposition. But obviously he loses, he had to drop. And my point of view, I've dropped him down to the 4th position, okay? We'll have to see what happens moving forward with Anthony Joshua. It's going to be very, very interesting to see whether he can bounce back and how he does it. So number 3, again, let me know what you feel about this ranking. So, 3rd place, Andy Ruiz Jr., the new champion with 3 titles. He's got a record of 33-1 with 22 by way of stoppage. He's the new champ by way of emphatic fashion against Anthony Joshua. But again, like 1 or 2 of the guys that have been in this top 10, CV is paper thin. Paper thin. He's mainly for US contender level opponents, journeymen, people that were never really going to amount to much. He challenged Joseph Parker a couple of years ago, 2016, for Tyson Fury's vacated strap. Very, very close fight. Majority decision victory for Joseph Parker on home soil, I believe. I personally actually scored it a draw. But at the time, I said on my video discussing it that I could be persuaded to give it to Andy Ruiz if you put a gun to my head. But I could not argue it in favour of Parker. It was either a draw or Ruiz, by a hair's breadth. Okay. So there you go. So the form for Ruiz is pretty clear. He stopped Dimitrenko and then took championship gold from Anthony Joshua. So pretty fantastic year for Andy Ruiz Jr. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next. Does that rematch with Anthony Joshua happen? I personally feel that it will happen. I feel that it will happen in the UK. And it could be a different fight. We know what Eddie Hearn's like. He's going to force that through to be in the UK, and they're going to do everything they can to try and move that belt from Ruiz, or those belts from Ruiz to Joshua. But it was a bad fight for Joshua, and Ruiz fought incredibly well, particularly considering he got dropped. He got dropped And then he got up, you know, like nothing had happened. He didn't look phased. He didn't look hurt. Not in the slightest, you know. And then he went on and he just, you know, gave Joshua an absolute hiding, which was pretty damn incredible. So let's move on. The top two. Now, number 2, I've gone for Tyson Fury. I know some people would say, you know, Tyson Fury should be number 1. And some rankings are putting him on. I can't argue that. I couldn't argue a case that Tyson Fury should be number 1, and I'll go into that in a minute. But Tyson Fury, 28-0, 20 stoppages. He is the lineal heavyweight champion that he likes to keep telling everyone. You know, his crowning glory was when he outboxed Wladimir Klitschko in 2015 to take all of the belts. We actually predicted that would happen here on the channel when basically everyone else was not giving him a chance. They were saying he was the laughing stock. How that has changed. However, you know, like a lot of these guys, you look at his CV, it's not particularly great. You know, outside of, you know, a couple of decent fights, you know, as we say, he's beaten Klitschko. He's got two wins over Chisora. One of them, you know, was incredibly messy and quite a long time ago. Scoring of Christian Hammer and stoppage win over former cruiserweight champion Cunningham. You know, so outside of that, you know, there's not really much to shout about or get too excited about. I know some of his fights have been interesting over the years, and it's why I'm such a huge fan of his. But in terms of pure ranking, you know, there's not a lot of body there, you know. But for me, this ranking, putting him in second place and possibly as high as second place, is based upon the draw with Wilder. You know, he, you know, had he lost a decision there, you know, which could have happened, you know, then he drops down significantly, in my opinion. He has to, based on the criteria that I spoke about at the start. You know, he would have dropped down the rankings had there been a loss, and he would have been, would have been in the 10, but he wouldn't have been, you know, at the top because, you know, you look at the criteria that I said. Yeah, you look at his current form. You're talking about Safari, Pianetta, Schwartz. Now, outside the draw with Wilder, you know, none of those 3 fights do anything to add to his ranking. Absolutely nothing. So it's all based on, you know, boxing very well against Wilder. But, you know, let's not forget how epic it was when Fury got off the canvas. I think it's a classic moment in heavyweight boxing. And also, let's not forget, Tyson Fury is the only man Wilder has fought that he hasn't stopped. And that could change. Of course, that could change. Now, number 1, you've guessed it. Deontay Wilder hits number 1, and he returns to number 1. The last couple of rankings, at least the last one, he was in position 2 because Anthony Joshua was number 1. So Wilder, 41-0-1 with 40 stoppages, 10 world title fights, WBC champ for a long time. He's defended these titles predominantly against average, you know, US-based contender types. You know, his recent form is okay, or he's pretty good. You know, stopped Louise Ortiz, went the distance with Fury, and a pretty much instant stoppage of Dominic Brazil. So for me, Deontay Wilder has to be number 1 for everything that I outlined and discussion on the other people. Deontay Wilder keeps the number 1 spot or returns it. Now, people that, you know, didn't make the top 10, you know, that might have, well, possibly would say that they should be, and possibly you got people like Trevor Bryan. Now, I'm laughing, but he's actually the interim WBA champ, which is a bit of a joke. But, you know, he's definitely not in the top 10. Jarrell Miller, under suspension, you know, he would have been in the top 10, you know, and we never know what would have happened against Anthony Joshua. Win or lose, he probably would have just scraped in. Manuel Charr hasn't fought for well over a year, and he's the regular WBA champion, and also Usyk. Now, some people are putting Usyk in their top 10, hasn't even fought. Let's just look at some of the other rankings. So BoxRec, currently at the time of speaking, have Ruiz as their number 1, Wilder number 2, Anthony Joshua number 3. Ring Magazine, they have Fury as their number 1. with Wilder 2, Ruiz Jr. 3. Now let's go through the organising bodies. WBO, Ruiz is the champion with White, Schwartz and Fury as the top 3. That will probably change. IBF, which is Ruiz the champion as well. You've got Pulev. 2 is vacant. How can you have a vacant position in a ranking? What an embarrassment. 3, Pacquiao. WBC, where Wilder is the champion. You've got White, Fury and Joshua. WBA, which have Ruiz. Ruiz is the champion. Char is the regular champion. Then you've got Browne, which is ranked 1. He's the interim champ. Usyk 2. How can Usyk be number 2 in the heavyweight rankings and he's never had a heavyweight fight? And then 3, Oquendo. I mean, come on, mate. What an absolute embarrassment. How can you have someone who hasn't fought for about 40 years be ranked 3 in your organisation? So anyway, let's move forward and talk about the heavyweight fights that are actually scheduled for the next couple of months, okay? So 29th of June, we've got Joseph Parker versus Lee Pye. 13th of July, Tony Yoka's 6th fight of his career is against Lomachenko. So that's pretty interesting. It's a big step up. On the same night, you've also got Joe Joyce versus Byron Jennings. That is a fight that I'm really looking forward to. Likewise, Dubois and Gorman. You've got Helenius versus Washington. Doesn't really mean much. Charles Martin has another outing on the same night. Then the following week, 20th of July, we've got Dillian Whyte versus Oscar Rivas. Interesting. Chisora versus Spilker on the same card, as well as the 2 Davids, Allen and Price, which should be a fun fight. Then 27th of July, we've got the heavyweight debut of Murat Gassiev. Again, something really interesting to look forward to. Hasn't fought since he lost to Usyk in the World Boxing competition. Can't remember what it's called, World Boxing Super Series or something like that. And then in August, Konatsky is against Ariola. And of course, we have this potential fight of Trevor Bryan versus Manuel Charr for the wonderful regular WBA title. So there's some fights coming up. Obviously, you've got these other fights, the rematches, Fury and Wilder and Ortiz and, Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. Those fights, potential later on in the year to look forward to. So that's the heavyweight rankings. Jump down to the description below, the comment section, pardon me, and let me know what your top 10 was. List your top 10 to me, exact top 10, nod who is your number 1 in the comment section. I hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll be back in 6 months for another rankings review, but we will be following this video up with a variety of all of the previews of all of these heavyweight fights that we spoke about. We're really going to be cracking down with some content on this channel. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. This has been Boxing Predictions.